Hey there, and welcome back to BuffSports Live, where you can take a break from Zoom University and lock in for your weekly update on all CU athletics. I'm Christina Robin. The men's basketball team recorded a second win in a row on Thursday night against the Trojans. Uriah Horn shot 12 in just 28 minutes on the court, forcing 11 boards against USC. CU also landed a dub at Oregon State on Saturday night. The game ended the Buffs' two-game losing streak, featuring a dominant McKinley Wright, tallying over a third of Colorado's points. In other news, a reschedule will take place against Arizona State on March 4th after an early February cancellation. So make sure to mark your calendars. And the women's basketball team swept the Washington teams last weekend, improving their conference wins to equal losses for the 2020-21 season. Wins at Wazoo and UW add to a now 4-game winning streak for the Buffs. This brings them to an overall winning record with 10 wins and 9 losses. Coach J.R. Payne said that a strong defense pulled them against a tough Washington team. The Buffs will stay on the road for their final game before the Pac-12 tournament. While basketball travels their way through the Pac-12, CU's ski team will find themselves in Utah until Saturday. The women's and men's teams placed second overall at the RMISA Invitational last weekend. On the women's side, Ezra Smith skied her career best race with a 4th-place finish, and Magnus Bowie finished third for the men, snapping his 5-race win streak. The Buffs have firmly placed themselves among the top 2 teams in the country, competing alongside the Utah Utes. This weekend will finish up the Rocky Mountain Regions Championships before the NCAA tournament, and that'll be on March 10th. CU athletes tend to remain in the spotlight, especially our ski team. Colorado has the second most NCAA championship titles, right behind Denver University. But the question is, just how many titles does CU have? We'll have that answer for you later on in the show. Next up, we've got a smoking hot edition of Rapid Fire coming your way and a special segment featuring Jim Gray. Don't go anywhere.
Please record in Mike and Q talent in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Mic up on 2. All right, take 1. And fade camera 2. Take 3. Ready, red. Roll red. Take cam 1. Take red. Take it. Come on, roll red. Let's go. All right.
Hey, what are you doing?
I'm just calling the show.
There's no show.
Hey Buffs, we're back again with Troy Finnegan, who has a plethora of sports updates to give you at lightning speed. That's right, it's time for Rapid Fire.
Hey guys, Troy Finnegan here, taking a look at what to look forward to this weekend in CU sports. Women's basketball will take the court for the first time in a week, concluding their regular season slate on the road at Utah. Tip-off is set for noon. After today, volleyball will play the second game of their weekend trip to Eugene, taking on the Oregon Ducks Sunday at 11:30 a.m. Tennis will be making the short trip up to Fort Collins this weekend to take on Colorado State at 3:15. And finally, after sweeping their 3-game non-conference schedule, the women's soccer team will begin conference play when they head to Washington, concluding their 2-game trip on Sunday at 1. All of us here at BuffSports Live are looking forward to watching all of our athletes compete this weekend, and we wish them the best. Sko Buffs! Back to you, Christina.
One of the most distinguished alumni from the University of Colorado is Jim Gray, a Hall of Fame sportscaster with more than 40 years of experience. Now, Gray is giving us a behind-the-scenes look at some of the most iconic sporting events over the last half-century in his newest book, Talking to Ghosts. The moments you remember and the stories you've never heard. BuffSports Live's Vinay Simlot sat down with Jim Gray for a wide-ranging interview. Here's part 1 on Gray's recollection of crucial events, starting with why he decided to write a book in the first place.
I have a buddy of mine. His name is Stedman Graham, and he's written 12 books. And Stedman says to me all the time, Jim Gray, they're paying you to talk. Just keep talking. And he also says, you better get all these stories down on paper. And there was another man who was a good friend of mine. His name was Johnny Cochran, and he was probably best remembered for representing O.J. Simpson in his trial. And he said, Jim, don't tell me you're going to be one of those people whose memory gets better with time. So I just kind of had all that in the back of my head, Stedman and Johnny Cochran. And so I put together the book.
You mentioned your time at the CU School of Journalism and working for Channel 9. Your first interview with a GOAT was Muhammad Ali at the Denver airport. Was it intimidating at all to see him for the first time and interview him in person?
No, it was exciting. I mean, I was probably a little in awe. It was Muhammad Ali. He was the most famous man in the world at that time. So I wasn't expecting it. So I didn't have a chance to get nervous or excited or to be prepared like you would prepare for an interview. And then Ali was so kind and generous, not only with his time, but with the way he spoke to me. And first thing he said after I asked the first question is, "You're doing this interview? You?" And everybody started to laugh. Well, that made me laugh because it was funny. And then like 3 or 4 questions later, he said, "You sound like the local Howard Cosell." Well, I've been watching Howard Cosell, was the big sportscaster. So when he said that to me, it was the best by far and away compliment I could ever receive. Came back to edit myself out because they wouldn't put me on the air. And the man who had given me my internship and hired me as a videotape editor came in the booth and wanted to see Ali. Stood up and he said, "You and this videotape are going on the air. It's barely adequate." So I tell everybody, Vinay, I've been barely adequate ever since.
Since then, Jim Gray's career has been more than adequate on the sidelines of some of the highest profile sporting events, covering Super Bowls, majors on the PGA Tour, NBA Finals, and in 2018, Gray was elected into the Boxing Hall of Fame, introduced by Mike Tyson, who on the back of his book wrote, "We were a sensational duo. Out of the ring, Jim became my most trusted friend. He's there no matter what and never afraid to give it to me straight, as he does in this book. Jim talks to goats because it takes a goat to know a goat." In November, Jim Gray was there for Mike Tyson's first time back in the ring in more than a decade.
I didn't want to see him get hurt.
Yeah.
I'm very fond personally of Mike, and we've had a lot of great experiences together, a lot of terrific interviews. And so I didn't want to, see him get hurt. He's 54 years old. He hasn't been in a meaningful fight in 20 years. But I thought that Mike would win, and Mike did very, very well. And he, like usual, made the interview hilarious and entertaining and thought-provoking and everything at the end.
And Gray was in the middle of one of the lowest moments in sports history, the Malice at the Palace, a 2004 game where a fight broke out between the Indiana Pacers, Detroit Pistons, and some of their fans.
That was unlike anything that we had ever seen, at least that I had experienced and that the NBA had seen, and it was, a bad night for the institution of basketball. Ron Artest was attacked. Ron Artest did have a natural reaction when you are attacked to want to defend yourself, but you just can't go up in the stands. You can't do that. It was just a horrible night, and that's what it is, and that's what it remains. But it was an interesting night to be reporting.
Were you ever scared for your safety?
Personally, in peril, no. I didn't know. I walked around. I was right near him where he was lying down, and I had spoken to him just moments before and told him he would be the star of the game to stay out on the court, that I would be interviewing him. And he said, okay. And then the suds came flying in, the liquid. And I just walked to the center of the court, held up my microphone, just like I had done with Mills Lane when Tyson had bitten the earlobe of Holyfield. I went to the center of the court because I saw one of the referees go to the center of the court. If you hit a referee, you're never playing again.
Mm-hmm.
You can forget it. Your career is over. So nobody bothers the referees. They may hate the calls they make. They may scream at them. They may MF them. Whatever they want to do. The one thing they don't do is touch them.
But through more than 40 years covering sports, the highs and the lows, Gray recognizes how important they are to society.
Sports can bring communities together. Sports can bring people together. Human excellence and the drama that unfold are so unpredictable, and it stretches not only the creativity and imagination of what men and women can do, it then becomes immortalized, and everybody else will try and either duplicate it or take it even further. When you see what can be done, and you know what they are doing is so far beyond the pale of what anybody in existence has ever done before, to truly be the best at that for not only that moment, but to have it become immortalized so that that moment will be lived on again and again and again. We're still talking about Jesse Owens. He went into Hitler's den and pushed back Aryan supremacy. So we still talk and we live through that. And so the past becomes modern day because of what these people are able to do. They're a lot of fun, but they're also important. Okay, they're also important, and it's important that we are able to properly document it and leave it behind for future generations for good.
Now don't go anywhere because we'll be right back with Buff Banter and how the women's volleyball team plans to sweep instead of be swept.
They were nervous and inexperienced, as new faces looking to achieve greatness. As the years went on, they grew confident in their abilities.
Maybe. Yes, sir!
Now they look to guide others in the same pursuit.
There it is! Can you believe it?
All are welcome to be featured on the biggest stage.
Is it his time?
We invite you to discover what you're capable of at BuffSports Live.
Tennis is coming off a 4-3 loss against the University of Denver this past weekend, and they'll be looking for a rebound Friday against the Air Force Academy at 5 p.m. They'll continue on with a match against the Colorado State Rams at 3:15 on Saturday. These will be the two final non-conference matchups for now as they take on Pac-12 opponents, starting on March 5th. Colorado's volleyball team had a tough weekend as the Washington Huskies swept the Buffaloes in both matchups. Redshirt senior and outside hitter Leah Clayton totaled 29 kills in the first match. Colorado forced a 2-game win before Washington secured the win in the last set. The Buffs' offensive rhythm fell off in the second match with a .144 hitting percentage and 22 errors. The Buffs now sit 4-4 overall in gameplay and will face off against Oregon today at 3 p.m. and on Sunday at 11:30 a.m. And if one legend wasn't enough for you earlier, Taylor Sadusky is here to catch you up on one of the best players in CU history, John Wooten.
Back in November of 1956, the CU football team was set to check into a hotel in Salt Lake City, Utah ahead of their game against the Utes. Hotel staff purposely denied both room keys to Frank Clark and John Wooten, two of CU's black players, saying colored cannot stay here. Dal Ward, CU's head coach at the time, responded, "Well, if they can't stay here, neither can we. We can get back on the bus and catch a flight back to Boulder." This moment still lives with Wooten, who is now 84. All the support of his teammates and CU staff not only handled the incident perfectly, but showcased a prime example of how equality should look. During this time, the United States was fighting a civil rights movement as Black Americans were already fighting for equal rights under the law of the United States. Wooten grew up in Carlsbad, New Mexico, where schools were segregated as much as the rest of the country. It wasn't until high school when Wooten was able to enter a school system that was finally integrated. Wooten was a star athlete, excelling both at football and basketball, leading his team to 2 state titles. Several schools were highly interested in getting Wooten, but it was the compassion and caring figure of Hugh Davidson, CU's freshman coach at the time, who initially got John to commit to CU. Between 1956 through 1958, Wooten was an all-star American at CU, going 29-2, and helped the Buffs lead the country in rushing. Wooten went on to be drafted as the 5th-round choice for the Cleveland Browns and played 9 seasons with them, with an additional 1 season with the Washington Redskins. The 2-time Pro Bowler and 1964 NFL champion was eventually inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame, as well as CU's Hall of Fame. Throughout his whole career, Wooten had been an activist in the fight for civil rights and even worked alongside Martin Luther King Jr. in Washington, D.C. His efforts led him to establish the Fritz Pollard Alliance, whose purpose is to provide equal opportunities for Black coaches in the profession. Not only is Wooten proud of his alma mater, but is happy to see plenty of more opportunities being opened up for minorities and women within the industry. John Wooten will forever be commemorated for his amazing career both on and off the field. John Wooten had recently said, "As long as I breathe, I am going to always be involved in human rights." I'm Taylor Sadusky. This is Buff Banter.
The men's golf team wrapped up the weekend with a 7th place finish at the annual Wyoming Desert Intercollegiate. The Buffs made their best 18-hole team score this season, a 2 under 286, and finished with a 5 over par 869 total. The Buffs will return to action in less than 2 weeks to compete in the Lambkin Classic on March 8th through the 10th. Now, don't think we forgot about the Buffs version of Jeopardy! We'll be right back with the answer to the trivia question.
Deserves a second look. Michael taking off, the patented tongue comes out. Just in front of that line. Look at this, the double clutch, the rebound.
Pass in left wing. Looks behind him. Wide open. Right wing. Up top. Open for three. Fires.
Really good basketball, Mark. Unselfish, smart basketball.
Open for three. Fires. Nothing but nylon from downtown. Good ball move by Colorado.
This week's Tweet of the Week highlights Colorado standout McKinley Wright IV. Tad Boyle rewarded Wright before playing the Trojans with an honorary basketball for a breakthrough of 1,600 points, 600 rebounds, and 600 assists. All right, we've been patient, but if you're also itching to find out the answer to the trivia question, wait no more. The answer for how many NCAA championships Team Colorado has under their belt is 20. CU holds the title of second in the nation, tailing behind DU, who owns just one more title than the Buffs at 21. Now, we know it's never easy to say goodbye, so we'll catch you on the rebound right here next Friday. Have a good weekend, and as always, go Buffs.